Hi, everybody. Rather than highlight an area of ministry in our network with this update, I just felt like bringing a word of personal encouragement. Part of the DNA of my family is we love surprises. So we love to surprise and bless each other. In fact, so much so that over Thanksgiving, my son and daughter conspired to have her flown into town from California just so we could be together. We love surprises. And Christmas season is a time of surprises as well. In fact, imagine the first Christmas. Joseph is awakened in a dream, and hey, Joseph, your fiance Mary's going to have a baby, and you're not the father. Surprise! Or hey, Mary, you're going to have a baby, and he's going to be the everlasting God. Surprise! And what about for us, 2020? Looking back over our shoulder, this has been a year of surprises. Worldwide health crisis, the first of anything like this in our lifetime. Think about the massive protests that we had nationwide. Think about all the businesses that have been closed and the jobs have been lost. And think about the multiple hurricanes that happened in the southeast part of our country this year. A huge number. And don't forget about the worst wildfires we've had in our nation's history. I remember being in western Nebraska, and you could visibly see the ash from 1,500 miles away. What surprises we've had, and what surprises that we've had in our churches as well. Our attendance is now different. Corporate worship is different. Children's ministry is different. And giving is different, and experiencing fellowship, that's way different. 1 year ago, who could have imagined any of this? Certainly all of us were surprised and jarred about the shifts that happened throughout the year. But would any of us say that God was caught by surprise? In fact, if you had known at the beginning of 2020 what this year was going to turn out like, what would you have done differently? I think the reality is that the ministry is constantly full of surprises. I remember one of my first years in ministry, it was the toughest year I had, and I was kind of surprised, blindsided by huge problems that were so much larger than I was. And I felt weighed down. I felt like the whole world was against me. And there were a lot of people in the community that were very upset with me with regards to some things going on in our church. And I remember one young adult said to me, "Pastor Gary, don't forget, no matter what you're facing, God knows." Those two words really stuck with me because it reminded me that I need to keep in the forefront of my thought, no matter what I'm facing, God knows. So I want to tell you today, no matter what you're facing in ministry, God knows. If you're feeling overwhelmed with the weight and burdens of pastoring, God knows. He gets it. Maybe you're dealing with the shortage of finances. Maybe that's a constant drumbeat where you minister. Even there, God knows. He knows about the challenges in your family. He knows about the challenges with your children. If people are gossiping behind your back, God knows. And if you've received critical notes or emails from someone or several in the congregation that make you feel like you could never quite measure up, even then, God knows. Hey, God knows that half of your congregation feels like everybody should be wearing masks, and half of your congregation feels like, why do we bother with these masks? If you've come to the place where you feel at the end of the year like it's just been too much, and maybe you feel like even quitting, God knows that too. I was in a predicament in my early years of ministry, and so I called my presbyter and I just said, help. And I met with him, and he asked me a simple question that I want to ask you today. He simply said, are you called? Well, that was an easy one because, of course, I knew that God had called me to be a pastor. However, it reminded me of why I was in ministry in the first place. Certainly not because it was an easy pathway, but because God called me to do it. So no matter what I face, God knows. There's a little verse in Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 10. It says, "For God is not unjust. He will not forget how hard you have worked for him and how you have shown your love to him by caring for other believers as you still do. The part I like is the as you still do. Not just what you did in the past, but you're still doing it. And God knows He won't forget. So when you feel smothered by the responsibility of cranking out another sermon, remember, God knows. What if God is less interested in your sermon than He is in your friendship? Don't believe a word of it when the enemy whispers in your ear that you're not up to the task, or you're mediocre, or you're a failure. Hold tightly to this. God knows. And as you learn from the challenges over the last year, and you pivot to the yet unknown kingdom opportunities of the next year, I believe God's going to speak to you, and that you're going to hear Him more clearly than you ever have, and that God is going to use you in new and surprising ways this next year. God won't be surprised by anything that happens next year, because God knows, and He's called you, and He's crazy about you, and God is for you. And if God is for you, really doesn't matter who is against you. God knows. Take care.